Kim Tae-ho stood at the window of his small room, looking out at the stars. The Galactic Defense Academy floated in space above Centauri Prime, a beautiful blue planet that looked peaceful from here. Nothing like Earth, his home world. Earth was different. Earth was dangerous. The academy was huge, with silver walls and bright lights everywhere. Students from all over the galaxy came here to become soldiers and officers. There were tall, thin aliens with 4 arms. There were small, bug-like creatures with shiny shells. There were rock people who looked like walking mountains. And there was Tai-ho, the only human in his class. Tai-ho was 19 years old, average, height for a human with dark hair and quiet eyes. He kept to himself most of the time. The other students looked at him like he was something strange and scary. Maybe he was. The academy had rules about everything. Students had to wear gray uniforms. They had to eat in the big dining hall together. They had to attend classes and training every day. The goal was to make all the different alien species work together as one team. It sounded good in theory. In practice, things were harder. Tae-ho walked through the hallways to his first class of the day. Other students moved away when they saw him coming. Not in an obvious way, but enough that he noticed. They whispered when they thought he could not hear them. Words like Deathworlder and primitive and dangerous followed him everywhere. His first class was basic military history with instructor Kolmak, a tall alien with purple skin and 3 eyes. The classroom was large with white walls and floating, desks arranged in neat rows. Tae-ho sat in the back corner alone as usual. Today we will learn about the Great Peace, Instructor Kolmak began. For over 1,000 years, civilized species have solved conflicts through talking, not fighting. We have evolved beyond the need for violence. A student in the front row raised her hand. It was Cadet Zilnara, one of the telepathic vegans. She had pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Instructor, why do we still need military academies if there is no more war? Good question, Kolmak replied. We need soldiers to keep the peace, to stop primitive species from causing trouble, to protect civilization from those who have not yet learned better ways. Tae-ho felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He kept his face calm and wrote notes in his tablet. He had learned not to react to these comments. Getting angry only proved their point about humans being savage. After class, Tae-ho walked to the dining hall. The room was enormous, with tables floating in the air and food dispensers along the walls. Different species sat in their own groups. The Rigelians, with their 4 arms, sat together. The insect-like Keplers made clicking sounds as they talked. The crystalline Zephyrians glowed softly as they shared information through light patterns. Tae-ho got his food and looked for a place to sit. Every table seemed full when he approached. Not actually full, but the other students would suddenly remember they had somewhere else to be. He finally found an empty table near the back and ate alone. From across the room, he could hear Cadet Bixtar talking loudly. Bixtar was the class leader, a tall crystalline being who sparkled when he moved. His voice carried clearly in the quiet dining hall. I heard humans can break bones with their bare hands, Bixtar was saying, and they eat meat from other animals. Can you imagine? Actually killing and eating other living things? My instructor told me they come from a world so dangerous that 90% of species that lived there are now dead, added Cadet Nick Savell, one of the insect people. Only the most violent creatures survived. That explains a lot, said Cadet Rock Shin, a massive being made of living rock. No wonder they seem so aggressive. Their whole planet tried to kill them. Tae-ho finished his meal and left quietly. This was normal. Every day brought new whispers, new fears, new reasons why humans did not belong here. The strange thing was, most of what they said was true. Earth was dangerous. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most other species. They were stronger, faster, and more durable than they looked, But Taeho did not feel dangerous. He felt tired. His next class was Advanced Combat Theory, with instructor Veltara. She was a Rigelian with 4 arms and golden skin. Unlike other instructors, she treated all students the same. The classroom was set up like a war room, with holographic displays showing battle scenarios from across the galaxy. Combat is not about being the strongest or the fastest, Veltara explained as students took their seats. It is about understanding your enemy and adapting to any situation. The best warriors are not those who never lose. They are those who learn from every fight. She activated a hologram showing a famous battle between 2 alien fleets. Who can tell me why the smaller force won this engagement? Several hands went up. Bixtar was chosen to answer. The larger fleet had better weapons and more ships, but they followed standard attack patterns. The smaller fleet used unexpected tactics. Correct, Veltara said. Flexibility defeats strength. Intelligence defeats brute force. This is why we study history and tactics, not just weapons and fighting. Taeho found himself paying close attention. This was one of the few classes where he felt like he belonged. Strategy made sense to him in a way that other subjects did not. When Veltara showed examples of guerrilla warfare and unconventional tactics, Taeho could see solutions that other students missed. After class, Veltara called him to her desk. Cadet Kim, your test scores in tactical analysis are the highest in the class. Have you studied military history before? Not formally, instructor, Taeho replied. But my grandfather fought in the border wars on Earth. He taught me about strategy and adaptation. Veltara's 4 eyes studied him carefully. Earth conflicts were different from modern galactic warfare, I understand. More primitive methods. Yes, instructor. Very different. Perhaps that perspective is valuable, she said thoughtfully. Classical training has its place, but fresh ideas often come from unexpected sources. Taeho was not sure how to respond to that. It was the first time an instructor had suggested his background might be useful rather than problematic. The day continued with physical training, mathematics, and galactic law classes. In each one, Taeho performed well but remained isolated. Other students worked in groups on projects. They shared notes and helped each other study. Taeho worked alone. That evening, he returned to his room and contacted his family on Earth. His mother's face appeared on the communication screen, smiling, but worried. How are things at the academy? She asked in Korean. The same as always, Taeho replied in the same language. I am learning a lot, but making friends is difficult. Give it time, his mother said. People fear what they do not understand. Once they get to know you, they will see who you really are. Taeho was not sure about that. The other students did not seem interested in getting to know him. They had already decided what humans were like based on stories and fears passed down through generations. After the call ended, Taeho looked out his window again at the peaceful planet below. Centauri Prime had never known war or disaster. Its people had evolved in safety and comfort. They saw violence as something primitive and wrong, a sign that a species had not yet become civilized. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans were behind the rest of the galaxy in important ways. But Taeho could not change where he came from or what he was. All he could do was prove that being from Earth did not make him a monster. Tomorrow would bring more classes, more whispers, more isolation. But it would also bring new chances to show that humans deserved their place among the stars. Taeho fell asleep, planning how to do better, how to fit in, how to make others see past their fears. He had no idea that some of his classmates were planning something very different. 3 weeks passed at the academy, and things got worse for Taeho instead of better. It started during a tactical simulation exercise in Instructor Veltara's class. The students were divided into teams and given a mission to capture an enemy base using holographic soldiers and vehicles. Taeho was placed on a team with 3 other students who clearly did not want him there. Cadet Moreland, a tall alien with green skin, was the team leader. He assigned Taeho to stay back and guard their starting position while the others carried out the real attack. "Just stay here and do not interfere," Moreland told him. "We know what we are doing." Taeho watched on his display as his teammates followed standard academy tactics. They moved their forces in neat formations toward the enemy base. The holographic defenders, programmed with basic military intelligence, easily predicted their movements and cut them down. After 20 minutes, Moreland's team was losing badly. Their forces were scattered, and the enemy was preparing a counterattack that would destroy them completely. "We need help," Moreland finally admitted, calling Taeho on the communication system. "Can you do anything from your position?" Taeho studied the battlefield display. The enemy had positioned their forces to defend against standard attacks, but they had left their supply lines unprotected. In a real war, those supplies would be vulnerable. "I can try something," Taeho said. He split his remaining forces into small groups and sent them on different paths toward the enemy base. Instead of attacking the defenses directly, he targeted the supply depots, communication centers, and power stations. The simulated enemy forces suddenly found themselves cut off from reinforcements and supplies. Their organized defense fell apart as they tried to protect multiple targets at once. Taeho's small groups hit fast and moved away before the enemy could respond effectively. Within 10 minutes, the enemy base was captured. Moreland's team had won. The other students stared at their displays in shock. Instructor Veltara reviewed the simulation data with all 4 of her eyes focused intently on the screens. "Interesting tactics, Cadet Kim," she said. "Where did you learn about supply line disruption?" "My grandfather talked about it," Taeho replied. "He said armies need food and ammunition to fight. Take those away, and even strong enemies become weak." "Very practical thinking," Veltara noted. She turned to address the whole class. "This exercise shows the value of unconventional approaches. Sometimes the best solution is not the obvious one." But Taeho's teammates did not look grateful. Moreland's face was dark with anger. "We would have won eventually," he muttered. "We did not need help from a Deathworlder." After class, Taeho overheard Moreland talking to other students in the hallway. "Did you see how he fought? Like some kind of savage. Normal people do not think about war that way." "It is in their nature," agreed Cadet Bixtar, the crystalline class leader. "Humans come from a world where everything tries to kill everything else. Of course they are good at violence." Word spread quickly through the academy about Taeho's performance in the simulation. Some instructors were impressed, but many students became even more suspicious of him. They started saying that humans had an unfair advantage because they thought like predators instead of civilized beings. The next day brought survival training in the Academy's environmental simulation chambers. Students were tested on how long they could survive in different harsh conditions like extreme cold, high radiation, and low oxygen environments. Taeho performed better than anyone expected. In the cold chamber, while other students shivered and complained, he seemed barely affected. In the radiation zone, his body handled levels that made others sick. When the oxygen was reduced to simulate high-altitude conditions, he continued working normally while others gasped for breath. "How is this possible?" asked Dr. Hexara, the medical instructor running the tests. She was a small, spider-like alien with multiple eyes and delicate limbs. "These conditions should be affecting you more severely." "I do not know," Taeho answered, honestly. "I feel fine." Dr. Hexara made notes on her tablet with several hands at once. "Fascinating. Human physiology is more adaptable than our records indicated. Your blood oxygen levels are still normal, even at this reduced atmospheric pressure." The other students watched with growing unease as Taeho completed tests that had left them exhausted and struggling. When the session ended, he was not even breathing hard. "This is not fair," complained Cadet Zilnara, the pale telepathic student. How are we supposed to compete with someone whose body is designed for surviving disasters? Maybe that is the point, said Cadet Nixavel, one of the insect-like Keplers. Maybe humans are not meant to be here with civilized species. Maybe they should stay on their death world where they belong. These comments followed Tae-ho everywhere now. In the dining hall, conversations stopped when he approached. In study groups that he was never invited to join, students whispered about human advantages and unfair biology. Some began filing formal complaints with the academy administration. The complaints claimed that Tae-ho made other students feel unsafe and uncomfortable. They said his presence disrupted the learning environment. A few suggested that humans were too different from other species to properly integrate into galactic society. Tae-ho tried to ignore the growing hostility, but it was becoming harder. He ate meals alone and spent free time in his room studying. When he tried to join group activities, the atmosphere became tense and awkward until he left. One evening, he was walking back from the library when he overheard a group of students talking in an empty classroom. He recognized Bixtar's voice immediately. "Something has to be done about the human," Bixtar was saying. "He is disrupting everything we have worked for here. The Academy is supposed to bring species together, not showcase primitive advantages." "The instructors seem impressed by him," said another voice that sounded like Rockshin, the massive rock-skinned student. "They think his different perspective is valuable." "That is exactly the problem," Bixtar replied. "If they start thinking, human methods are better than civilized approaches, it undermines everything we believe about evolution and progress." "So what do you suggest we do?" asked a third voice. "We need to show everyone what humans really are underneath all that quiet behavior," Bixtar said. "We need to make him reveal his true nature." Tae-ho moved away from the door quietly, his heart beating fast. He was not sure exactly what they were planning, but it did not sound good. Part of him wanted to report the conversation to Academy security, but he had no proof of any real threat. They had not said anything specific about hurting him. The next few days were tense. Tae-ho noticed Bixtar and his friends watching him more closely than usual. They sat near him in classes and followed him in the hallways. When he looked directly at them, they would turn away and act like nothing was happening. In combat theory class, Instructor Veltara assigned a new project about historical battles and tactical innovation. Students were supposed to work in groups to analyze famous military campaigns and present their findings to the class. As usual, no one invited Tae-ho to join their group. He approached Instructor Veltara after class to ask about working alone. "That would not be fair to you," Veltara said with concern in her voice. "Group projects are designed to teach cooperation and shared problem-solving. Let me see if I can find you a team." She looked around the classroom at the other students who were still gathering their materials. "Cadet Bixtar, your group only has 3 members. You can add Cadet Kim to make it 4. Bixtar's crystalline face showed no emotion, but his internal light flickered slightly. "Of course, Instructor. We would be happy to work with the human." Tae-ho felt a chill at the way Bixtar said "the human" instead of using his name. But he had no choice except to join the group. Veltara meant well, but she did not understand the social dynamics among the students. The group consisted of Bixtar, Nixavel, the insect-like Kepler, Rockshin, the rock giant, and now Tae-ho. They agreed to meet in study room 7 the next evening to begin working on their project. Tae-ho spent that night reading about the historical campaigns they were supposed to analyze. He found several interesting examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. His grandfather had told him similar stories about human conflicts, but seeing the same principles applied across different species and time periods was fascinating. He arrived at study room 7 early and waited for the others. When they came in, their body language seemed different somehow, more tense, more focused. Bixtar closed the door behind them and locked it. "For privacy," he explained, when Tae-ho looked at him questioningly. We do not want other students overhearing our project ideas." They sat around the table and began discussing their assignment. At first, everything seemed normal. They talked about different battles and which ones would be most interesting to analyze. But gradually, Taeho noticed that the conversation was turning toward human military history. "I heard Earth has had thousands of wars," Nixavel said, his compound eyes reflecting the room lights. "How do humans live with so much violence?" "It must be terrible," added Rokshin. "Always fighting and killing each other. No wonder you seem so aggressive compared to civilized species." The next morning, Taeho woke up feeling uneasy about what had happened in the study room. He had managed to leave without any real confrontation, but the look in Bixtar's eyes told him this was not over. The crystalline alien and his friends were planning something. Taeho got dressed in his gray academy uniform and made his way to the dining hall for breakfast. The routine was always the same. Get food, find an empty table, eat alone while other students whispered and stared. Today felt different, though. More eyes were watching him than usual. He sat at his usual table in the back corner and tried to focus on his meal. The food was nutritious but bland, designed to meet the dietary needs of dozens of different species. Taeho missed the spicy, Korean dishes his mother used to make, but he had learned not to complain about small things. From across the dining hall, he could see Bixtar sitting with his usual group of followers. The crystalline being's internal light was pulsing in quick, excited patterns. Nixavel, the insect-like Kepler, was making rapid clicking sounds that other students seemed to find amusing. Rokshin sat like a mountain of living stone, his deep voice rumbling with what sounded like anticipation. Whatever they were planning, it was happening soon. After breakfast, Taeho attended his morning classes as usual. Basic mathematics with Professor Kilton, a floating jellyfish-like creature who taught through telepathic equations. Galactic history with instructor Yexmar, who always emphasized how peaceful and evolved modern civilization had become. Each class passed without incident, but Taeho could feel the tension building. During lunch break, he decided to skip the dining hall and study in his room instead. Walking through the empty hallways, he noticed security cameras tracking his movement more obviously than before. Either the academy administration was watching him more closely, or someone had requested increased surveillance. His final class of the day was Advanced Combat Theory with instructor Veltara. This was the one place where Taeho felt somewhat comfortable, where his different perspective was seen as valuable rather than threatening. The classroom was arranged like a military briefing room with holographic displays and tactical interfaces at every station. Students filed in and took their usual seats. Taeho sat in the middle section, trying not to isolate himself completely, but still maintaining some distance from others. Bixtar entered with his group and sat directly behind Taeho. That was unusual. They normally sat in the front row where Bixtar could show off his knowledge to the instructor. Instructor Veltara began the lesson by activating a three-dimensional star map showing recent border conflicts in the outer galaxy. Today we will analyze rapid response tactics in fluid combat situations. Sometimes military commanders must make critical decisions with incomplete information. She pointed to a highlighted system where two alien fleets had clashed over mining rights. The defending force was outnumbered 3-1, but they had superior knowledge of local space conditions. How might they use this advantage? Several. Students raised their hands to answer. Veltara called on different cadets to share their thoughts. The discussion was lively and educational, covering topics like defensive positioning, supply line management, and tactical flexibility. Taeho found himself drawn into the lesson despite his worries about Bixtar. Military strategy made sense to him in ways that other subjects did not. When Veltara showed examples of smaller forces using guerrilla tactics against larger enemies, he could see patterns and possibilities that others missed. "Cadet Kim?" Veltara said, noticing his attention. "You look like you have thoughts about this scenario." Would you care to share your analysis? Tae-ho hesitated. Speaking up in class often brought unwanted attention, but Veltara had asked him directly. The defending fleet could use hit-and-run attacks, he said. Strike fast at weak points, then retreat before the enemy can respond effectively. Make them chase shadows while their forces get spread out and tired. Interesting approach, Veltara nodded. That kind of warfare requires excellent coordination and timing. Also, a willingness to take calculated risks. Sounds like primitive. Raiding tactics to me, Bixtar commented from behind Tae-ho. Civilized warfare relies on strategy and technology, not sneaking around like savages. Veltara's 4 eyes focused on Bixtar with a sharp look. All effective tactics have historical roots, Cadet. What you call primitive may simply be proven by long experience. Please keep your comments constructive. Bixtar's internal light flickered with what looked like anger, but he said nothing more. The lesson continued for another 30 minutes, covering different scenarios and tactical options. When the class period was almost over, Veltara announced that she needed to step out briefly to take an urgent communication from Academy headquarters. Continue your discussion of the scenarios we covered today, she told the class. I will return in a few minutes. As soon as the instructor left the room, the atmosphere changed completely. Students began talking quietly among themselves, but there was an undercurrent of tension that had not been there before. Tae-ho felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up, an instinctive warning that had kept his ancestors alive on Earth's dangerous surface. He turned in his seat to see what was happening behind him. Bixtar was standing up, his crystalline form towering over the other students. Nixavel had moved to the door and was standing guard there. Rakshin was approaching from the left side of the classroom. Zilnara, the telepathic vegan, was walking up from the right. Other students in the room seemed to sense that something was about to happen. Some moved away from their seats toward the walls. Others watched with curious expressions, like they were expecting some kind of show. Well, well, Bixtar said, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. Alone at last, Deathworlder. No instructor to protect you. No academy rules to hide behind. Tae-ho remained seated, keeping his hands visible on his desk. What do you want, Bixtar? I want to show everyone what humans really are, the crystalline alien replied. All this time you have been pretending to be civilized. But we know better. We know what you are underneath that quiet act. I am not acting, Tae-ho said calmly. I am just trying to learn and graduate like everyone else. Lies, spat Nixavel from the doorway. Humans are violent predators. Your whole species is built for killing. You cannot change what evolution made you. Maybe he needs some encouragement to show his true nature, suggested Rakshin, cracking his knuckles with sounds like breaking stone. Zilnara's large dark eyes were fixed on Tae-ho with an unsettling intensity. I can sense the darkness in his mind, she said in her soft, whispery voice. So much capacity for violence, barely controlled. It would be better for everyone if we exposed it now. Tae-ho slowly stood up from his desk. The 4 aliens formed a loose circle around him, blocking any easy path to the door. Other students had backed away to give them space, but none of them were leaving or calling for help. They wanted to see what would happen next. This is not necessary, Tae-ho said, looking each of his opponents in the eyes. We can work out our differences without fighting. See? Bixtar laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of crystal. Even now he pretends to want peace. But look at his body language. Look at how he moves. That is a predator calculating attack, angles, and escape routes. It was true. Without conscious thought, Tae-ho had positioned himself to keep all 4 opponents in sight while staying light on his feet. His weight was balanced, ready to move in any direction. These were automatic responses drilled into him by years of martial arts training and refined by genetic instincts older than civilization. You want to hurt us? Zilnara continued, her telepathic abilities apparently picking up emotional undercurrents. that Teho was not even aware of himself. You want to fight. It is what your species does. What your species has always done. I want to be left alone. Teho replied honestly. I want to finish my education and serve in the Galactic Defense Force. I do not want to hurt anyone. But you will, Bixatar said with confidence. When we push you far enough, you will show everyone what Deathworlders are really like. And then, the Academy will finally admit that humans do not belong here. The four aliens began moving closer, tightening their circle. Rakshan flexed his massive arms, each one thick as a tree trunk and harder than stone. Nixavel's razor-sharp limbs glinted in the classroom lights. Bixtar's internal illumination was pulsing faster now, building energy for some kind of attack. Zilnara's mental pressure was increasing, trying to cloud Teho's thoughts with fear and confusion. Last chance, Teho said quietly. Walk away now, and we can pretend this never happened. Or what? Bixtar taunted. You will report us to the instructors? File a complaint with Academy administration? How very civilized of you. Or I will defend myself. Teho replied simply. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Bixtar smiled, a cruel expression that looked wrong on his crystalline features. Perfect, he said. Show us what you really are, human. Bixtar raised his hands and brilliant light erupted from his body, designed to blind and disorient. Opponents. At the same instant, Rakshin lunged forward with arms spread wide to grab Teho in a crushing bear hug. Nixavel attacked from the side with blade-like limbs aimed at vital spots. The first 3 seconds determined everything that followed. When Bixtar's blinding light erupted and Rakshin charged forward, something deep in Teho's brain took control. Not anger or rage, but something much older and more fundamental. The part of human evolution that had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predator attacks, and 10,000 other disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. His pupils contracted instantly to filter out Bixtar's light attack. Human eyes had evolved to handle the blazing sun of Earth, a star much brighter and more dangerous than the gentle suns that warmed other worlds. The crystalline alien's attempt to blind him was like trying to use a flashlight against someone who had learned to see in nuclear fire. Rakshin's massive arms reached for Teho in a crushing embrace that could have broken the bones of most species, but the rock-skinned alien was big and strong and confident in his power. He was not fast. Teho dropped low and twisted, letting Rakshin's momentum carry the huge alien past him. As Rakshin stumbled forward off balance, Teho drove his elbow upward into the spot where the alien's ribs met, right below his center of mass. The impact sounded like a hammer hitting stone. Rakshin's breath exploded out of his lungs in a sound like a landslide. His eyes went wide with shock and pain as he crashed into a desk and collapsed, gasping for air that would not come. 3 seconds. Nixavel attacked from the side with blade-like arms moving faster than most eyes could follow. The insect alien was built for speed and precision, with razor edges that could slice through metal. His compound eyes tracked multiple targets at once, and his reflexes were lightning quick. But speed was relative, and Nixavel had never fought. Anyone whose species had learned to dodge the strikes of creatures like tigers, bears, and venomous snakes, predators that moved faster than thought and gave no second chances to slow learners. Teho read the angle of Nixavel's attack and shifted just enough to let the deadly limbs whistle past his face. Then he grabbed the alien's extended arm and used the insect's own momentum against him, redirecting the attack into a spinning throw that sent Nixavel flying across the classroom. The impact when Nixavel hit the wall sounded like breaking glass. His hard exoskeleton, designed to protect him from normal impacts, cracked in several places. He slid down to the floor and lay still, conscious but unable to move without pain shooting through his damaged shell. 7 seconds. Bixtar realized. that his light attack had failed and began charging energy for something more powerful. Crystalline aliens could focus internal light into laser-like beams capable of cutting through armor. The attack took a few seconds to build up, but when released, it was devastating. Those few seconds were exactly what Tae-ho needed. He closed the distance between them faster than Bix-Tar expected. The crystalline alien was used to fighting at range, using his light powers to keep enemies away while he prepared his stronger attacks. He had never faced someone who could move like a human in full combat mode. Tae-ho's first strike hit a structural weak point where Bix-Tar's arm connected to his torso. Crystalline bodies were strong but brittle, like living glass. They could withstand tremendous pressure but were vulnerable to impacts at specific angles. The sound of Bix-Tar's arm breaking was like a bell shattering. The alien screamed, a noise, like wind howling through broken crystal. His charged energy attack dissipated harmlessly as shock and pain overwhelmed his concentration. Tae-ho's second strike hit another weak point in Bix-Tar's chest structure. The alien's internal light flickered and went dark as he fell backward, unconscious, before he hit the ground. 11 seconds. Zilnara had been trying to attack Tae-ho's mind with waves of psychic force designed to cause fear, confusion, and paralysis. Telepathic species, like the vegans, were used to enemies whose thoughts were simple and easy to manipulate. But human minds were different. Shaped by millions of years of surviving in a world where fear meant death, where confusion was fatal, where paralysis was the end of everything. Evolution had given humans mental defenses that even they did not fully understand. Zilnara's psychic attack crashed against Tae-ho's mind like water against a stone cliff. Not only did it fail to affect him, but the mental effort of resisting actually focused his thoughts and sharpened his reflexes even more. Worse for Zilnara, the feedback from her failed attack sent waves of psychic shock back through her own nervous system. She had tried to dominate a predator's mind, and instead found herself facing something her species had no experience with. A consciousness forged in the crucible of a death world, harder and more resilient than anything her people had ever encountered. The pale alien staggered backward, clutching her head as mental static overwhelmed her delicate telepathic abilities. She collapsed to her knees, then fell sideways onto the floor, her large, dark eyes rolling back as her mind shut down to protect itself from further damage. 15 seconds. Tae-ho stood in the center of the classroom, breathing normally, not even sweating. Around him lay 4 unconscious aliens who had expected an easy victory against a single primitive human. Other students stared in complete silence, their mouths open in shock. The door burst open, and Instructor Veltara rushed in, having heard the sounds of combat from the hallway. Her 4 eyes took in the scene instantly. Broken furniture, unconscious students, and Tae-ho standing calmly in the middle of it all. "What happened here?" she demanded, her voice sharp with authority. Before Tae-ho could answer, other students began talking at once. Some claimed they had not seen how the fight started. Others said it had happened too fast to follow. A few tried to explain that Bix-Tar and his friends had surrounded Tae-ho, but their accounts were confused and contradictory. "Enough," Veltara said, raising all 4 of her hands for silence. She activated her wrist communicator and called for medical teams and security personnel. Then she turned her attention to Tae-ho. "Are you injured, Cadet Kim?" "No, Instructor," Tae-ho replied quietly. "I am fine. And these 4? She gestured at the unconscious aliens. "They will recover," Tae-ho said. "I was careful not to cause permanent damage." Veltara studied him with her alien eyes, looking for signs of the berserker rage that Academy files claimed all humans possessed. Instead, she saw a young man who looked tired and sad, not angry or triumphant. Medical teams arrived within minutes, along with Academy security officers. The unconscious students were loaded onto medical gurneys and taken to the infirmary. Preliminary scans showed that all four would make full recoveries, though Bixtar and Nixavel would need several days of treatment for their structural injuries. Security Chief Caxton, a massive alien who looked like a walking tree, interviewed the witnesses one by one. Their stories were similar in the basic facts, but varied wildly in the details. Everyone agreed that Bixtar's group had surrounded Tai-Ho and started the confrontation, but no one could clearly explain how the fight had ended so quickly. "The human moved like lightning," one student said. "I have never seen anything like it." "It was over before I realized it had started," claimed another. "One moment they were talking, the next moment 4 aliens were on the ground." "He did not seem angry or out of control," a third witness reported. "He just looked focused and calm like he was solving a math problem." Security Chief Caxton had Tai-Ho taken to a private room for questioning. The interview lasted for 2 hours, covering everything from Tai-Ho's background to the events leading up to the fight. Tai-Ho answered every question honestly, describing the growing tensions and Bixtar's apparent plan to provoke him into violence. "Why did you not report these threats to Academy security?" Caxton asked. "They never directly threatened me," Tai-Ho explained. "They just made it clear they did not want me here. I hoped things would get better with time." "And when they attacked you?" "I defended myself using minimal necessary force," Tai-Ho said. "I tried to disable them quickly to prevent anyone from getting seriously hurt." Caxton reviewed the security footage from the classroom cameras. The recording showed clearly that Bixtar and his allies had initiated the confrontation and attacked first. It also showed Tai-Ho's response, though the camera frame rate was too slow to capture all the details of his movements. "Remarkable," Caxton muttered as he watched the footage again. "I have never seen anyone move with such speed and precision. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "My grandfather taught me basic self-defense," Tai-Ho replied. "And I studied martial arts as a child, but mostly it was just instinct." "Instinct," Caxton repeated thoughtfully. "Human instinct." News of the fight spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, every student knew that the quiet human cadet had defeated 4 opponents in 15 seconds without breaking a sweat. The story grew with each telling, becoming more dramatic and incredible. Some students were frightened, claiming that Tai-Ho had revealed his true savage nature. Others were impressed, saying they had never seen such skill and control in combat. A few began to wonder if they had misjudged humans entirely. In the infirmary, the 4 defeated aliens slowly regained consciousness. Bixtar was the first to wake up, his crystalline body dim and cracked in several places. When he tried to speak, his voice came out as a weak whisper. "What happened?" he asked the medical technician treating his injuries. The academy was buzzing with activity the morning after the fight. Students gathered in small groups throughout the corridors, talking in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. Security officers conducted interviews while medical teams monitored the 4 injured aliens in the infirmary. Academy administrators held emergency meetings behind closed doors. Tai-Ho sat in his room, waiting. He had been told to remain there while the administration decided his fate. No classes, no training, no contact with other students, just waiting and thinking about what had happened. He reviewed the fight in his mind, analyzing each second. Had he used too much force? Could he have ended it differently? The truth was, once his survival instincts had taken over, everything else became automatic. His body had moved without conscious thought, responding to threats with techniques refined over millions of years of human evolution. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Instructor Veltara entered, her 4 arms carrying a data tablet and a cup of tea. She looked tired, like she had not slept much the previous night. "How are you feeling, Cadet Kim?" she asked, settling into the room's single chair. "Confused," Tai-Ho replied honestly. "I do not know if I did the right thing." You defended yourself when attacked by 4 opponents, Veltara said. Most people would consider that not just right, but necessary. Most people are not humans. From Death Worlds, Tejo pointed out. The other students think I proved their point about my species being dangerous. Veltara activated her data tablet and showed him a series of video clips. These are security recordings from the classroom. I have watched them dozens of times, studying every detail. The clips showed the fight from different angles, though the camera frame rate made some of Tejo's movements appear blurred. Still, the sequence of events was clear. 4 aliens surrounding 1 human. A coordinated attack. A swift, precise response that ended the threat without causing permanent damage. Do you know what I see when I watch these recordings? Veltara asked. Tejo shook his head. I see perfect control, she said. You had multiple opportunities to cause serious injury or even death, but you chose not to. Every strike was calculated to disable without destroying. That is not the behavior of a savage. Then why do the other students fear me more than ever? Tejo asked. Because they finally understand what they have been sharing a classroom with, Veltara replied. For the first time, they truly comprehend what it means to be from a death world. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful planet below. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds like Centauri Prime. Stable climates, abundant resources, few predators. They developed intelligence and technology without facing constant threats to their survival. Earth was different, Tejo said. Very different, Veltara agreed. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, predators that could kill with a single bite, diseases that wiped out entire populations. Your species survived by becoming the ultimate generalists, strong enough to fight, smart enough to adapt, resilient enough to endure anything. She turned back to face him. Yesterday, 4 students learned what it means to attack a creature forged in such conditions. They expected a primitive savage who would lash out in blind rage. Instead, they encountered a predator who could analyze their weaknesses and respond with surgical precision. So what happens now? Tejo asked. That depends on the Academy Board, Veltara said. They are meeting this afternoon to decide your status. Some members want you expelled immediately. They believe humans are too dangerous to integrate with other species. And the others? Others are beginning to ask different questions, she replied. Like why the Galactic Defense Force would not want soldiers with your capabilities. Why we would reject allies who could protect what civilization has built. The door chimed again. This time it was Security Chief Caxton, his tree-like form filling the doorway. Cadet Kim, the board is ready to see you. Tejo followed Caxton through corridors lined with curious students who whispered and stared as he passed. Some looked frightened. Others seemed almost respectful. A few watched with obvious fascination, like they were seeing something they had never imagined before. The Academy Board chamber was an impressive circular room with seats arranged in tiers around a central platform. 12 beings from different species sat in judgment, their alien features giving nothing away about their thoughts or intentions. Academy Director Morthex, a dignified alien with silver skin and wise eyes, called the session to order. Cadet Kim Tejo, you stand accused of excessive violence against fellow students. How do you respond? I defended myself when attacked, Tejo replied simply. I used only the force necessary to stop the threat. Board member Zilken, a crystalline being similar to Bixtar, leaned forward. You disabled 4 opponents in 15 seconds. How is that not excessive force? Because all 4 opponents are alive and recovering, Tejo answered. If I had wanted to use excessive force, they would not be. A murmur ran through the chamber at this blunt statement. Several board members exchanged worried glances. Are you threatening this board? Demanded board member Hexara, her spider-like form trembling with indignation. No, Tejo said calmly. I am explaining the difference between defending myself and attacking with intent to kill. Yesterday, I chose defense. The attackers are alive because I showed restraint, not because they were too strong to defeat. Director Morthex studied the young human with ancient eyes. We have reviewed the security footage. The attack upon you was unprovoked and coordinated. Under Academy regulations, you had every right to defend yourself. Then why am I here? Taeho asked. Because your response exceeded normal expectations, board member Kolvex replied. Students have disagreements and even fights occasionally, but none have ever resulted in 4 opponents being hospitalized simultaneously. Normal expectations based on what? Instructor Veltara interjected from the observers section. The board had allowed her to speak as a character witness. Based on species that evolved in safe environments, Cadet Kim's response was proportional to the threat he faced. 4 against 1 is hardly proportional, board member Hexara objected. Exactly my point, Veltara replied. 4 Academy students, trained in basic combat and using their species' natural advantages, attacked 1 human who was sitting at his desk. The proportional response was whatever it took to survive. Director Morthex called for quiet as arguments broke out among the board members. Half wanted Taeho expelled immediately as a danger to other students. The other half was beginning to see the situation differently. Perhaps we should hear from the injured parties, suggested board member Yil Knox. What do they have to say about this incident? Security Chief Caxton activated a communication link to the infirmary. Bixtar's image appeared on the chamber's main screen, his crystalline body still showing cracks from the fight. Cadet Bixtar, Director Morthex said formally, please describe the events that led to your hospitalization. Bixtar's internal light flickered weakly as he spoke. We were discussing our class project when the human became aggressive. He attacked us without warning. That is not what the security footage shows, Caxton interrupted. The cameras clearly record you and your allies surrounding Cadet Kim and initiating physical contact. We were just talking, Bixtar insisted, but his light patterns betrayed his nervousness. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. You coordinated a 4-person ambush, Veltara stated flatly. You planned to provoke Cadet Kim into violence to prove your theories about human savagery. The only thing you did not plan for was losing. The truth of this statement hung in the air. Even the board members who favored expelling Taeho could see that Bixtar and his friends had created the situation that led to their injuries. Director Morthex made his decision. Cadet Kim, you will not be expelled. The evidence clearly shows you acted in self-defense against multiple attackers. However, this incident has raised important questions about human integration in the Academy. What kind of questions? Taeho asked. Questions about whether we have been approaching this incorrectly, the director replied. For too long, we have treated your presence here as an experiment in tolerance. Can civilized species accept a representative from a death world? Can we learn to coexist despite our differences? He stood and began pacing around the chamber. But yesterday's events suggest we have been asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking whether we can tolerate humans, perhaps we should be asking why we would ever want to exclude them. Board member Hexara spoke up. Because they are dangerous. Yesterday proved that. Yesterday proved they are effective, Director Morthex corrected. There is a difference. Dangerous implies reckless or uncontrolled behavior. What we witnessed was the opposite. Precise, calculated, and restrained use of force to neutralize a threat. He turned to address Taeho directly. Your actions yesterday were not those of a savage or a monster. They were those of a professional, soldier doing exactly what soldiers are trained to do. Protect the innocent, defeat the enemy, and minimize casualties on both sides. So what happens now? Taeho asked. Now we learn, the director replied. The Galactic Defense Force has been studying the security footage.